If you want to reap lifelong health benefits from exercise, you need to be able to exercise for the entirety of your life. And that's physically, but that's also from a scheduling perspective. So you need to be able to be honest with yourself and identify what you can realistically commit to every week. For some people, working out 90 minutes a day for 5 days a week is a realistic commitment. They are willing to do that. For other people, twice a week for 20 minutes is what they can realistically commit to. There's no right or wrong answer here, but at the end of the day, it just has to get done. Welcome to the Exercise is Health podcast, where we're talking about exercise, health, and the interconnectedness of the two. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we will be coming to you every single week from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Exercise is Health podcast. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we're coming to you from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg in Schaumburg, Illinois. Now, at Muscle Activation Schaumburg, we believe your health is your most valuable asset. Your health is one of the biggest influencers of the quality and quantity of time that you have. And while there are many aspects of health, our expertise is exercise. Exercise has been proven time and again to not only improve your health, but also increase your longevity and improve your quality of life. And we got to tell you, we have an event for you. If you're listening to this podcast, if you have any interest in improving your health, in improving your longevity, in improving your quality of life, then you need to check out an event that we are hosting Saturday, April 4th, 2020. Julie, tell them more about it.
So on Saturday, April 4th, 2020, we are hosting the second ever Schaumburg Health Summit. So Schaumburg Health Summit 2020. We are so excited, and last year, we had so much positive feedback that we decided to bring it back. We have lined up 8 keynote speakers. I'm actually speaking this year, so
Woo-hoo!
I'm excited about that. And each speaker is going to be doing like a TED Talk style presentation to educate you, to get your brains thinking and moving in the health direction. And so we are going everywhere from, we have a surgeon, we have holistic people, we have nutrition, we have weight loss, we have mindset. I'm actually going to be talking about flexibility. So we have the whole gamut of different aspects of health. Also, we have amazing sponsors that'll be at the event. And the cool thing about sponsors is they are giving out cool stuff. So you're definitely going to want to be there. Tickets are on sale right now at www.schaumburghealthsummit.com. And we'd love to see you there. You can meet Charlie and I. We will be there. Yeah. Everyone that went to the event last year, they were like, I'm so glad I went. I kind of thought it was going to be a health fair, and they realized it really wasn't. Nope. So we're trying to bring this really cool concept to life. So we'd love for you to join us and to support us, and we'd love to meet you.
I gotta say, I'm really excited about this year's speaker lineup. I mean, we've been handing out flyers to our clients and around town, and every time I hand one to my clients, I go through and I talk about what each of the speakers is going to be talking about. Like, I feel myself just getting really excited for this year's lineup. So it's going to be a great one. Make sure to check it out if you're available Saturday, April 4th, 2020. It's going to be at the Fairfield Inn and Suites here in Schaumburg. So, Julie, I have a question for you. Okay. What are some of the top reasons that you hear why people don't work out?
I don't have time.
Well, I think that's probably a number one. Yeah, number one. The number one.
For sure.
I just don't have time. You know, I'll do it when I find the time. When I have more time, that's when I'll start exercising.
That's right.
I hear it all the time. Whenever we bring up the idea of, exercise to people, if they're not currently exercising, that's probably the number one thing that we hear as far as why they're not exercising. Oh, I don't have the time. And so if you find yourself saying that ever, when it comes to exercise, I just don't have the time this week, today, this month, for the next 3 months, ever, then we have some knowledge that we want to bring your way of things that you can start doing throughout your day in order to somehow magically create/find the time to work out on a regular basis. Okay. Because one thing that we found this week in particular is that daylight savings time came and went, and it has screwed people's schedules up. All right. It's like, when it's fall back, everybody loves it because they get that extra hour. When it's spring ahead, it's like, oh my gosh, I lose an hour. My entire schedule's screwed up. Everybody's sleep schedule is screwed up. So we want to use this opportunity rather to kind of impart some ideas that you can start implementing within your own life to get your schedule back on track and find/create the time to work out, not just once, okay? That's not hard. Not for a week. Again, that's not hard, but work out consistently, sustainably for the foreseeable future.
I think the first thing that we have to talk about, and once we say this, you're going to be like, yeah, I know exactly, is that everyone has time. You have time to do stuff, right? And you're going to fill that stuff with the stuff that you value the most. So the question always becomes is, do you value exercising? And it's like that kind of a weird statement to say like to someone's face, like when they're like, oh yeah, I just don't have time. And always I want to say back like, well, do you value it? And here's the thing, you might value it. You might even tell yourself you value it, but it's very clear that you value it less than the other stuff because you're finding time to watch television, to, and it doesn't even have to be negative stuff. Like you might say, oh, well, of course you're going to bring up the negative stuff, like go out clubbing or go out to dinner. But you might value, if you have 10 minutes, you might value meditating for those 10 minutes over exercise. That's totally cool. I'm just saying there is a hierarchy of valuing stuff. And I think it's really important to acknowledge. I remember thinking, just even 2 years ago, thinking, wow, I'm a business owner. I have to exercise. I have to eat healthy, meal prep. I have to, nurture my relationships. How would I ever have time to have a kid? How would I have time to put my kid to bed? And now I have a kid and I found time, right? Because I value it. It's something that absolutely mandatory has to happen in my schedule. Like my child needs to go to bed and she needs to be nurtured. She needs to be snuggled and I value it. So I put it in my schedule. I want to do that. And so what's interesting is that at one point in my life, I thought there's no possible way I would ever have time for that. And now it happens. So what's interesting is the same thing applies for anything in your schedule. A lot of people will say, oh, I don't have time to meditate. People say I should meditate. I don't have time to exercise. People say I should exercise. But it's all about, are you valuing doing that activity? So I think it's important just to acknowledge that, like, hey, right now, if you're not having time to exercise, it just means you're not valuing it more than other stuff because we're filling our day with something. We have time. It just depends on what we're putting in that time.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And that really is step one, is just to acknowledge the choices that you're making, acknowledge how you're prioritizing things. And it's not good or bad, it's not right or wrong, but you at least have to acknowledge that that's happening because otherwise you can't make the choice to choose otherwise, right? So if you can't at least acknowledge that you're choosing a certain, to do certain activities, you're choosing certain priorities, well, then there's no possible way that you can make the choice to choose otherwise. So there's a really neat quote by Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he says, but until a person can say deeply and honestly, I am what I am today because of the choices I made yesterday, that person cannot say, I choose otherwise. And I think this is such a powerful quote because it's acknowledging that we all have a choice of what we do throughout our day. And so until you acknowledge that you have that choice, then you don't have the ability to make a different choice throughout the day as far as the actions that you take and the activities that you do. So the first thing that you need to do if you want to quote unquote find the time to exercise on a consistent basis is you have to acknowledge that you have the choice to do that. You have to acknowledge the choices that you're making, and you have to acknowledge how you're prioritizing your current activities and the choices that you're making.
Now, as we're talking about this, I was thinking about this example that I think this was last week or the week before. I don't know, Charlie, you'll let me know. And I'm bringing this up because this is actually the first time I've ever done this. So Charlie and I are humans too, and Charlie is much better at like being scheduled and on time with things than I am. And I remember it was a morning and Charlie was like, oh, okay, so what are you going to do today? And I said, I'll be at the office, I have a few clients and I'm going to work out and then we're going to have lunch, all the stuff. And here it is approaching lunch. And Charlie said, so are you going to work out? Because I said I was going to work out. And I remember feeling so stressed out and flustered that day. And I thought, well, when am I going to have the time? Like, I just had to plan all this stuff for like Health Summit. It was so stressed, like getting this together. It's a lot of to-dos and blah, blah, blah. And I remember I stopped myself from saying that. And I said, I'm just not prioritizing it right now. And I said it with a little bit of sass, but what was really nice and freeing about that is because I didn't prioritize it. It was my choice. Like, I chose, to continue to work on things that needed to get done here at work rather than working out. I prioritized getting that work done over my exercise. So just taking some ownership. I know it sucks to do that. Like, we always want to feel like, oh, it's time's fault. There just wasn't enough of it, versus like, oh, it's my fault. I didn't prioritize that. So anyways, I know you guys get the point, but here's the thing. Acknowledge what's going on, figure out your priorities. And if you really want to exercise, you certainly can find time. We have some good tips to help you with that. But also what's pretty freeing too is that if you're not valuing exercise right now, to acknowledge that too. Like, hey, I don't value exercise or working out right now.
Yeah.
It's just not my priority.
Exactly.
And that's cool, because guess what? Later it could be. It's fine. We're allowed to change.
Definitely. And that kind of goes into step number 2, which is kind of decide where exercise falls on your list of priorities. Like, a lot of times I would think the idea is that, oh, well, if we're going to exercise, then it has to be our top priority. And like, it has to come above everything else. And we have to make sure that everything else is scheduled around it. And for some people, that works great. And it can be like what we call a rock in their schedule, where it's the thing that they put in their schedule and everything else fills around it. But for most people, they're not interested in exercise being their rock in their schedule. It's going to be more of a filler thing in their schedule. So once you acknowledge kind of your ability to make your choices and where you're prioritizing exercise, you have to decide, is exercise something that's going to be more of a rock in your schedule, or is it going to be more of a filler in your schedule? And that can ebb and flow. But again, just making that choice, making that decision, and then giving yourself permission to acknowledge whether or not it's going to be a rock in your schedule or a filler in your schedule, that can really go a long way to then feeling like, okay, I've acknowledged that this is going to be more of a filler thing in my schedule. Now I can make choices that where I can still implement this filler thing in my schedule and still be able to get my exercise and workouts in on a consistent basis.
Now, so in Charlie's schedule, working out is a rock. In my schedule, it's a filler. And you know how I know that? Because Charlie has 1 to 2 p.m. blocked off in his schedule every single day as time to work out. I do not have time in my schedule blocked off to work out. And this would be a huge problem for me if I wasn't consistently exercising 3 to 4 times a week. But that is what works for me. What works for Charlie is for it to be set in his schedule over his lunch hour. That is workout time. Now, sometimes this doesn't work out. Like, Charlie and I have the luxury of literally changing our clothes and already being at the gym. A lot of people don't have that luxury. You might not work in a gym like we do. So you might have to have your rock as your 5 to 6 a.m. time before the kids wake up, before things in your day start happening. That might be your rock time. Or maybe you again are like me and you're more of like a filler kind of person. But the filler kind of person, also you have to acknowledge there's an issue if you're not finding the workout to fill the space, right? So like, if I was a filler person, like, well, I only got in 1 this week. Well, you're not really going to see much health changes with just 1 workout. Remember, working out and exercise really become potent when you are doing it consistently. So it really needs to be happening. So be a rock or be a filler person, but make sure it's happening.
So once you acknowledge that you have the choices and you're prioritizing things, and once you decide where and how exercise is going to fit in your schedule, then you need to create your schedule accordingly. And you need to be very honest with yourself about what you can realistically commit to, not for a week, not for a month, but for a long-term basis, okay? Because like we've said many times before, hey, exercise is one of the most powerful things that you can do to improve your health and well-being, but you only get to reap the health benefits of exercise if you're exercising. And so with that, you need to be able, if you want to reap lifelong health benefits from exercise, you need to be able to exercise for the entirety of your life. And that's physically, but that's also from a scheduling perspective. So you need to be able to be honest with yourself and and identify what you can realistically commit to every week. For some people, working out 90 minutes a day for 5 days a week is a realistic commitment. They are willing to do that. For other people, twice a week for 20 minutes is what they can realistically commit to. There's no right or wrong answer here, but at the end of the day, it just has to get done, right? So I think a lot of times we think, well, I don't have time because I can't commit an hour to it. So we're not asking for an hour. What can you commit to? Can you do 20 minutes? Can you do 10 minutes? Can you find something that you can do for 5 minutes? And then I'm not saying you just need to work out for 5 minutes. I would suggest definitely building up from there. But if that's your starting place, that's your starting place. But what can you realistically commit to on a consistent basis for the long term? Identifying that and then putting it into your schedule accordingly.
You know, Charlie, one thing I found with my workouts over the years is that now that I'm balancing time, between being a mom and being here at the business, is that it's really inconvenient to have to, every time after I work out, to shower. Because what's convenient for me is to shower at night. And so if I need to work out in the middle of the day, well, am I going to be like carrying around a stank for like 6 hours? No. So actually the way I schedule mine is I have certain workouts that are sweat-free workouts. They get my heart rate up, but I make sure I don't sweat. That way I just stay in my clothes. Luckily, yes, I wear workout clothes to work. But if you're wearing, stretchy slacks or whatever, your work clothes, you can figure out workouts that you can do without sweating. And then I have my other workouts where I do sweat. And so I make sure that those are going to be paired time-wise with time for me to get refreshed, whether that's a little, cloth bath in the bathroom or being able to get in the shower. So definitely figuring out and scheduling accordingly. So yes, finding time that you are willing to schedule and are you able to commit to. And then I think also being flexible, but also still committed to accommodating your changing life and your changing schedule. And that's going to be the success of like exercising for the long term, exercising for life.
Now, the fourth step in the whole process is to find the fringes or the dead zones within your day. Okay. If you feel like you are just jam-packed meeting after commitment, after, social outing, it's like, and you can't find the time to work out, I want you to find the fringes or the dead zones of your days or between your activities. All right. So what does this look like? This is the 10 minutes that you are waiting in the parking lot to pick up your kids after school or pick them up from soccer practice. Mm-hmm. This is the 15 minutes that you have after you clean up from dinner and before you sit down with your spouse to watch your TV show. This is the 5 minutes that you have after you get back to the office from lunch before you start your afternoon schedule. It's these little chunks of time that oftentimes we use to check our email, scroll through our social feeds, and do all these other things because it's like, well, I can't really do something productive right now, so I'm just going to say, well, I need to take some time off. I'm just going to sit here and kind of zone out, go through my phone, and take care of emails or other things. So these fringes, these dead zones, those can actually be super valuable times where you can start to get some activity in. Okay, do a little 5 minute jumping jack or body weight squat or whatever kind of routine. Walk up and down the hallways a whole bunch of times. Do something in that time that you have where you would normally just be kind of checking out, and all of a sudden you'll find that by just building in those little bits of activity throughout the day, you can start to get really nice workouts in throughout your day, even if it's not the traditional like 20 to 90 minute chunks that you're used to. So by finding those little fringes, those little dead zones throughout your day, between activities and on the ends of your days, those can be really useful times to get some kind of activity in to keep consistent with your workouts.
I love this. So I have 2 examples just to bring this to light for you guys. I used to train this woman and she was always committed to getting 1,000 steps in before she left her house. And so this is actually like a fringe of your day, right? She's like, so I'm brushing my teeth. And so I walk up and down my stairs and then, I wash my face, but while I'm drying it, I'm stepping in place. So she was just so committed to getting these steps in. And I'm not saying you need to be like 1,000 steps before I leave my house, but it was a really good use of time, right? Because she felt like she was so busy and never had time to exercise. Another one that is less of like micro fringes, but more like macro fringes, like in her week. I have this client that is a professional, and she travels from Monday through Thursday. And so when she's traveling, she feels like she's on the clock all the time because she's not at home. It's like, do I have room to pack gym clothes, blah, blah, blah. But she still works out 3 times a week because she works out Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And that's what she can do. Yes, it'd be great if she could exercise during those other 4 days, but 3 days a week of exercise is awesome. And it's what works for her schedule. And so sometimes I feel like when we're like, wow, it's just so busy for 4 days, I just need to take a whole day off. Well, you could, but also you could also take the time where maybe your brain's not working so hard, and instead you're giving your muscles some nourishment with some movement and challenge. So those are 2 examples I thought of as we were talking about the fringy stuff.
I think one thing that I actually just found out at least on iPhones, I don't know how it works on Android phones, but if you find that you're using this kind of dead time a lot to scroll through your social feeds or, play in other apps, you can actually go into the settings and set how much time you're going to allot for yourself in each of those apps. Whether they're more social networking in nature, or whether they're more productivity in nature, you can set a time limit every day. And so if you find that you are constantly using 5 minutes here, 15 minutes there to just kind of scroll through and just shut your brain off and do different things on your phone, you can say, hey, you know what, I'm going to set a time limit of like 20 minutes for all my social networking apps. And that will be your limit for the day. Your phone won't let you use those apps for the rest of the day until midnight. And so then you're going to be forced to find something else to do with that time. And that can be a great opportunity then to start to get in some movement. So if you find that that's a habit that you're trying to break, I think that could be a really effective way of trying to break that habit. Now, the final thing that you need to do is once you have acknowledged kind of the choices that you're making and how you're prioritizing your workouts, once you have decided whether exercise is going to be more of a rock in your schedule or whether it's going to be more of a filler in your schedule, once you've started to set your schedule accordingly, and once you've found your fringes and your dead zones throughout your day where you can get some movement in, you need to carry out your plan, okay? You need to put rubber to the road and start to get this ball rolling, all right? And so what are we looking at from an exercise perspective? We've talked about 2 different types of exercise pretty consistently on this podcast, and one is called the all-the-time exercise, and that's the exercise that's going to be done more through the fringes of your day, okay? That's going to be the exercise that you don't necessarily classify as exercise, but it's physical activity that you're doing throughout your day, whether it's taking the stairs instead of the elevator, walking a lap around your office building, things like that, where you're not necessarily breaking a sweat, you're maybe not changing your clothes, but it's physical activity that is mixed intermittently throughout the day, aka done all the time. So we're calling it all the time exercise. And the other then is the special event exercise, where you are going to the gym, you're changing your clothes, you're throwing on your shoes, you're hitting the weights, you're going for a run, something like that. And so that is the special event exercise that also needs to be found throughout your week. So once you figure out how you're going to get these in, then you need to carry out your plan. And that's really the 5th and final step of this whole how to exercise when you have no time.
When we're thinking about carrying out your plan, I think it's important to acknowledge what will help me carry out this plan, right? Because everyone's different. And some people, what makes them work out is when things are fun, right? So you need to go to some fun, entertaining class. That's cool. Do it. Make sure you do that. Some people need to be with a trainer, someone that's going to push them, someone that gives them reassurance that they're doing the right things. Great. Find yourself an awesome trainer and stick with it. Some people love doing it solo. This is me time. This gives me the opportunity to be by myself, to focus on me. That's great. Do that. So figure out what's going to help you carry out your plan. And remember that this is allowed to change as you change. Priorities change. I have a perfect example of this. I was just talking to my mom, and my mom growing up, she was always an avid exerciser, and she used to run like 3 to 5 miles every single morning, but starting at like 5. So that way she could get home, shower, and then she would get us up. Like she had 5 kids. That's a lot of kids. And so what's interesting is like that was her jam. That was her thing. And I was just talking to her last week, and she goes, yeah, I just don't know how people could possibly go to the gym and like lift weights and not get bored. And I had to say, like, I can see how you feel that way. But I do want to say not everyone feels that way, because me personally, I could never like go running for like miles and miles on end every single day and feel happy with it. And that's like her jam. Like she feels like, oh, I just love it. It feels so great. It's me time. But when it comes to her weights, so finally I said, you know, what will help you get your weights done? So she actually has a trainer, and that's how she gets her weights done, because she knows that she's not going to get her weight training done like she gets her cardio done without some accountability. Also, she does not like the feeling of like, maybe I'm doing this wrong. Maybe I'm not picking the right exercises for my body. So she also really loves that reassurance of like, okay, I'm doing the right things. Have the right form. I'm focusing on the right muscles. That helps her, and that education that the trainer can give her really helps her. So what she's found is she loves her cardio by herself, and then she can do her weights with the trainer, and that's great. For example, I'm kind of the opposite. Like if I'm going to do cardio, I'd like to participate in a class or ride on my bike with my iPhone class or whatever. And I can do my weights by myself just fine. That's not a problem for me. So everyone is so different. So figure out what's gonna help you really attack your plan and get these workouts in.
So if you're sitting there feeling like, I would like to work out, but I don't have the time to work out, there are things that you can do to exercise on a consistent basis, regardless of how busy your schedule is. By first acknowledging what choices you're making and how you're prioritizing your schedule, and then deciding whether exercise is more of a rock in your schedule or whether it's going to be more of a filler in your schedule. By setting your schedule accordingly, by finding the fringes and dead zones of your day where you can start to get some activity in, and then by finally carrying out your plan, you will be able to exercise on a more consistent basis for the long term. And at the end of the day, that is going to be one of the most powerful things that you can do to promote your health and longevity and allow you to keep doing all the other things in life that you enjoy doing for as long as you want to do them. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that feels like they have no time to exercise, but they know they should be exercising? Send this episode to them so they can learn about what they can start doing to figure out when in their schedule, when throughout their day, when throughout their week, they can start getting some exercise in on a consistent basis. And while you're online, if you wouldn't mind, head on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find us because we show up higher in those search results when they're looking for podcasts on exercise and when they're looking for podcasts on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us that rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.